I purchased my grandparents' house and my sister assumed that I would hand it over to her, so I told her that she could not set foot in her dream home. My wife and I recently closed on our dream house, and it has the family torn. Years ago, my grandparents owned the family home, but when they died unexpectedly with a lot of medical debt and expenses, our family had to sell their house. It was heartbreaking and sad, and I decided as a small child that one day I would buy the house back. I shared those dreams with my sister. I met my wife when I was 18 and she was 20. Her parents owned a small rental that they allowed her to live in rent-free, just paying for the expenses. She invited me to live with her a year into our relationship, and we got married a year after that. I told her about my dreams of owning my grandparents' house, and she fully supported me. We began putting large amounts of money back for a down payment in the hopes that the house wouldn't go on the market before we could afford it. Because we didn't pay rent and both had good jobs for our ages and the economy we lived in, we were able to put back a very large sum of money. My in-laws also offered us a sum of $75,000 for the down payment, and in total, we put back about $185,000. About 20 years after my grandparents passed away, their house finally went back on the market at a massive price. The house itself is huge, with 6 bedrooms, a large lakefront estate, and several features, including a pool and a small guest house. We knew that this house would have a huge price tag, and we skimped and budgeted for 9 years to afford my dream house. My sister was also house shopping at this time, but with a much smaller budget. Her and her husband have children, student debt, and rented for the past several years and were not able to put back money in the same way my wife and I were. When our grandparents' house went on the market, I sent the link to my sister and said that we were finally getting our grandparents' home back into the family. She was very excited and said as much, and that was that my wife and I moved forward, visiting the owners and real estate agents, having it inspected, and making an offer. They accepted, and we were absolutely over the moon. Throughout this whole process, my sister kept saying how excited she was to have the house back in the family and how nice it would be for her children to know this house and grow up in it as she and I did. Our grandparents' house was the location of every birthday, holiday, gathering, and reunion, and my wife and I planned on making it that way again, which was why what my sister said didn't raise any red flags. Weird that she'd phrase it that way, but not concerning. We had a barbecue at my parents' house to celebrate the final closing of our house. During the dinner, my mother-in-law offered to kennel our dogs while we were in the stages of moving to keep things easier and safe, and that was when my sister piped up. She asked why our dogs needed to be watched when the real issue was her kids. My wife asked what she meant, and she said that her kids would need more supervision than our dogs, and that she was confused as to why we'd be so busy, that our dogs needed watching. I told her I was the one confused. I didn't know she was helping us move, and that if her kids couldn't reliably be left to their own devices, then she absolutely did not need to help us pack. My sister proceeded to ask why my wife and I would be packing. I told her the obvious: we just closed in a house. For length reasons, I'll leave out a lot of the back and forth. But here's the gist of it. My sister had it in her head that we were buying the house to either own it out to her family or transfer the title to her name and have her pay us back in time. Yes, that is literally what she was thinking. Despite us never discussing anything like that once, when I told her that was not happening, my sister threw a fit. She was pissed because this was her dream too, and that it wasn't fair that only one of us could live it, that since she had children, they deserved to grow up in the family home, and what did my wife and I even need all that space for? My wife told her it isn't the family home anymore. It wasn't left in a will. We purchased it, and now it is our home, and we decide what we will do with it. My sister told my wife to shut up and that she had no say in this family discussion. I informed my sister that if she spoke to my wife that way again, we would not be having any kind of contact with her anymore. That she doesn't get to assume we're giving her a house and then throw a hissy fit when she's put in her place, and we left. My in-laws spoke to us on the matter a few times, but all told us we were right and that my sister was buried out of line. I assumed everyone would agree, but if they did, I wouldn't be on this thread. I got texts and voicemails from my parents saying that we were out of line and threatening my sister. They told me they were disappointed in me for taking my sister's dream from her and that I don't have kids, so I can't understand her want to provide them with a good home and childhood like she had, that it's only fair we set up a way to give her the house and that we could afford to find something else. Even my more distant relatives have said that it was cruel of us to take that from her. I'm honestly super shocked and taken aback. This feels surreal, and I hate that we're starting this new chapter out on such a sour note. Update. We've already made an appointment to have the locks changed and aren't concerned about my family trying to squat there. My in-laws have allowed us to park their camper trailer on the property while work is being done, not only for peace of mind, but to avoid commuting back and forth multiple times daily. I sent a message to my parents and siblings yesterday evening asking to meet up to talk things through and try and figure out what's wrong and what exactly the hell is happening. Earlier today, my wife and I met my parents and my brother's family at his house before my sister arrived. I let them know that if they tried to interrupt or control the conversation, we would leave. I told them that I never once even suggested my sister would be allowed to rent out the house or buy it from us, that we didn't know where she got the idea from, and showed them the text strings where I first sent her the listing and every conversation where I updated her on the progress. My mom asked to see the rest of the conversations about the house, and I told her there were none. She informed me that my sister told them all that we had made an agreement that my wife and I would purchase it and then rent it out to my sister's family until they'd paid enough to buy it, that we would live in the guest house and they'd get the main house. She told them that we had went back on our deal and had absolutely shattered her dreams of raising her kids in the house she grew up in. We gave our side, and it wasn't difficult at all to convince my parents that we were telling the truth. With a lack of evidence on my sister's part and absolutely no legal documentation, my parents didn't even attempt to try and back up what she told them. My parents were very apologetic and let us know that they never would have said those things to us have they known the truth, and that they supported us 100%. My brother was supportive of us as well, but he was never one of the people harassing us over this, so his reaction is less important. Around then, my sister and her husband showed up. My brother-in-law is a doormat and will give my sister whatever she wants, so I wasn't expecting much from him. I asked her to produce any of the necessary evidence to prove that I told her we'd rent the house out to her, that her lie was ill-conceived, and that she better have a good explanation. She attempted to suggest that I had deleted the conversation, but when she couldn't produce those messages either, her story fell apart. She started crying, saying it wasn't fair that we got everything handed to us, that we didn't need a house this big, and that we were rubbing our wealth in her face. So to my understanding, she thought she could trick everyone into bullying us into renting our house out to her. I guess, like some kind of effed in the head Scooby-Doo villain, instead of using ghosts to scare us away, she's using a fake rental agreement that she didn't even attempt to make look or sound legit. We let her know that she had a lot of apologizing to do before we'd consider having a relationship with her moving forward, and that she wouldn't be welcome in our home for a long time. At the moment, our relationship with my parents is rocky at best for obvious reasons. They let us know that they're here to support us if we need moving assistance or help with renovations, but it'll take some good hard thinking to decide if we're okay with that. We will not be giving anyone in my family a spare key, but my wife's parents will receive one for emergencies. My sister has done some odd things, but nothing as absolutely absurd as this. We will be meeting with an estate planner to put everything into writing. We plan on leaving the property to my sister-in-law and her kids with my mother-in-law as the executor of our estate for the time being.